Of course, with the leadership of the women's movement in Rojava, Kongrestar, Kurdish, Arab, and Turkmen women, all the different communities have come together and said, this occupation is feminicidal. This occupation is an expression of violence against women. And the international community is accepting it because the Turkish state is a member of NATO. The Turkish state receives money from the European Union in order to cope with the refugee crisis. But we can see that hundreds of thousands of people have been displaced as a result of the Turkish occupation. So this is an unacceptable situation. And as a result of this, because of the lack of accountability for these crimes, because the international community, including European countries, including the UK, seem to be okay with it, the Kurdish women's movement has launched in the recent years different international campaigns to say no to feminicide. And the 100 Reasons campaign is one of that. So 100,000 women, more than 100,000 women actually, have signed the call to prosecute Erdogan for feminicide, to say there is an explicit attack happening against politically active Kurdish women. There seems to be something inherently threatening to the Turkish government that comes from the fact that so many women are coming together to resist. And this is not only the Kurdish women's movement. We've seen so many different protests inside Turkey, also against the recent withdrawal from the Istanbul Convention. We see that this is really a transnational issue. The Turkish state is not only targeting the Kurdish people inside Turkey, it's targeting all women in its country, and it's also targeting Kurdish people and other people, including other women inside Syria, inside Iraq, and elsewhere. So in this sense, we say that this is really a transnational, international issue. If international mechanisms do not hold this person and its patriarchal violence accountable, then women must be in charge of justice seeking. So this campaign really is part of that, and us coming together here as so many women. We're almost 100 women, and we will share today the stories of 100 women to say we object, even if the state system, even if the laws written by men do not give us accountability. We don't rely on that. We have our own ways of seeking justice. We have ways of demanding justice, and we will make sure that we make the voices, the stories of these women heard. So you can see in my background, and some other people have the backgrounds as well. You can check the 100 Reasons campaign website, and hopefully we can all begin to work together and to say no to feminicide, which is an international issue, and it's related to so many other issues. It's related to poverty, it's related to issues around class, it's related to colonialism, it's related to militarism, and there's so many ways in which we can work together to make this thing stop, because in the Kurdish women's movement, we always say violence against women is not a fact of life, it's not nature. This is a system. Patriarchy is a system that we can abolish, that we can actively fight against, but this can only happen if we mobilize and organize together and build a massive women's resistance front against this patriarchal fascism. So I'll leave it here and I'll hand over back to Rahila, and I look forward to hearing from everybody about their story shared about Kurdish women. Thank you.
Thank you, Dila, for providing us with this snapshot of the situation facing Kurdish women today, and your sharp, absolutely spot-on analysis. So a big, big thank you to all the women who have given up their time today to be part of this important meeting, memorializing women who have been killed by the Turkish state, many of whom were playing their part in defending the Rojava women's revolution and the larger Kurdish women's struggle against an authoritarian and oppressive state, as you have just heard from Dila. I'm so excited by the diversity of the women present here today, some of whom have joined us from the USA, Canada, and Europe. The only upside of the pandemic is the increasingly global nature of our activism. So there are artists and actors, activists and academics present, and that's just professions beginning with the letter A. I wish there was more time for us to get to know each other better. So let me introduce myself. First of all, my name is Rahina Gupta. I'm in London. I'm a long-standing member of Southall Black Sisters, an organization that has spent the last 40 years plus, actually the same amount of time that the Kurdish women have been struggling for their rights. We've been campaigning against violence against women, advocating for minority women, and changing laws and policy where possible. It is a significant player in feminist activism in the UK. So when I went to Rojava in 2016, it was to carry out research for a book that I'm writing jointly with B. Campbell, entitled Why Doesn't Patriarchy Die? I went because I heard a young Kurdish man, Mehmet Aksoy, who was tragically killed by an ISIS bomb near Raqqa in 2017, talk eloquently about this revolution going on in northeastern Syria, which sounded just too incredible to be true. All I had seen on our TV screens was the death and destruction of Syria, and like many people, had been weighed down by the prejudice that women in the Middle East were downtrodden and constrained by deeply entrenched patriarchal attitudes. Besides, they were at war with ISIS then, and today with Turkey, and possibly tomorrow with Assad. War is the classic moment in which all rights get eroded or suspended. Who thinks about the importance of gender equality or racial inclusivity or direct democracy during war? But that is the project that the Kurdish people are developing in northeastern Syria. And I urge you all to do everything you can to keep this flame alive, even just spreading awareness of it among your networks will be a start. And if you sign up to the Kurdish Women's newsletter, you can keep in touch with developments in Kurdistan. I urge you also to join the Women Defend Rojava WhatsApp group. All the links are in the chat section. We will also send you a follow-up email with all the information. And it is within your power to boycott Turkish goods and tourism. So I call upon you to avoid going on holiday to Turkey. Let us aim to make Turkey a pariah state, a South Africa of the 22nd century. The Women's Revolution of Rojava is an inspirational moment. It has given me a fresh energy and a new perspective on my own activism here. I believe it is the most significant development for feminists in my lifetime. It is why such a diverse group of women have come together to set up Women Defend Rojava UK. You will be hearing briefly from each of them in a moment. As this is our inaugural meeting to launch the group, I would like to read out our launch statement, which is quite brief. Women Defend Rojava UK has been set up by feminists in the UK to coordinate international resistance in solidarity with the women of northern and eastern Syria and the Rojava revolution, which is facing an existential threat from various anti-democratic, racist, and fascist forces. The Women's Defense Forces, YPJ, played a central role in the military defeat of ISIS. Today, the remnants of ISIS and other jihadis have joined the Turkish army and occupied large areas of Rojava. They are now poised to launch further invasions, threatening to wipe out the revolution and all that it has achieved. The Assad regime, together with the superpowers' interest in this resource-rich and strategically important area, poses a further threat. The Rojava revolution is based on the three pillars of women's liberation, grassroots democracy, and ecological sustainability. One of the guiding principles of the revolution is that women are front and center of every institution. The revolution positions the anti-patriarchal struggle as the primary struggle against all forms of domination and oppression. Thousands of people have been inspired by the revolution to redouble their struggles in their own areas. The revolution has brought together women from many ethnicities: Kurdish, Arab, Assyrian, Yazidi, and others. Women Defend Rojava UK recognizes that our strength lies in unity. We aim to achieve unity through inclusivity, bringing together all women in the UK who stand up, stand together, and speak out in support of Rojava. Before I hand over to my sisters on the committee to introduce themselves, some practical information about the evening. When the organizing group has finished introducing itself, we will go straight into the readings, beginning with Dilar. We have 100 stories to get through, so we need to keep it flowing if we want to finish on time. Please do not wait for your name to be called out. Each one of you has received your story by email, and each story is numbered. Please unmute yourself only when the previous person is reading, and when you have finished, please mute yourself. Tell us your name, your location, and a very brief description of what you do before you read your story. As you read, a picture of the woman whose life you're commemorating will flash up on the screen, God and technology willing. If there is a pause in the proceedings, one of us will step in and read your story. I think Dilar has already provided a context of the story, so I don't need to go into that. We reckon that it will take 50 minutes to get through the readings if everything goes to plan, which should leave us some time for questions at the end. Dilar will then wrap up the evening. Just a note on disruption, we will not tolerate disruption. There are many supporters of the Erdogan regime who make it their business to silence Kurdish voices. They will be ejected from the event immediately. We will be recording the event and publishing it on various websites. I know that some of you will have your cameras switched off for purposes of anonymity. As for the other women, please do keep your videos switched on, but your audio off until it is your turn to read. Thank you. Dilar, please start off our readings.
I'm reading story number 1, Sakine Cansız. Sakine Cansız was born on February the 12th, 1958 in Dersim, in Turkey, Kurdistan, Bakur. She is one of the co-founders of the Kurdistan Workers' Party, the PKK. Her extensive mobilization of Kurdish women prepared the ground for the radical women's revolution of Rojava today. In the 1980s, she was arrested and tortured by the Turkish police and army because she was a Kurdish women's activist. She's known for her resistance against torture and assimilation practices in the prisons of Turkey. Swimming against the tide of oppressive patriarchal traditions as enforced by her mother, Sakine said, "My struggle with my mother prepared me for other struggles." She set her husband a deadline to come around to her political position of supporting an independent Kurdistan. When that didn't happen, she divorced him. On January the 9th, 2013, Sakine, along with Kurdish activists Fidan Doğan and Leyla Şailemez, were shot dead on the premises of the Kurdistan Information Center in Paris. The investigation in France revealed numerous indications that the suspected murderer, Ömer Güney, who was arrested a few days after his terrorist crime, had acted on behalf of the Turkish Secret Service. As the prosecution's indictment confirms, many elements of the trial suggest that the Turkish Secret Service is involved in the arrangement and preparation of the murders. The death of Ömer Güney 1 month before the start of his planned trial in Paris on January 23rd, 2017, deprived us of the possibility of a public trial that would have made it possible to convict not only the perpetrator, but also the Turkish state.
I am Mariam Namazi. I'm an Iranian-born women's rights activist, and I'm reading story number 2 of Fidan Doğan. Fidan was born in 1982 in the Kurdish part of Turkey. 2 years after her birth, her family had to migrate to France. She began her involvement in the Kurdish freedom struggle in Europe and took part in cultural and youth activities across Europe. She changed her name to Rojbin, which means to bring the sun. In 2002, Rojbin took over responsibility as the representative of the Kurdistan National Congress in France. And by 2011, she was leading the Kurdistan Information Office in Paris. She was well known for her diplomacy work. Rojbin was assassinated on the streets of Paris, along with Sakine Jansiz and Leyla Shailemez on the 9th of January 2013 by the Turkish Secret Service.
Hello, I'm Geeta Sehgal. I work with Mariam Namazi in the One Law for All campaign. I'm reading this from Dehradun in India, and I'm very pleased to be participating in this event. I'm reading the story of Leyla Shailemez. Leyla was born in January 1989 in Mersin, Kurdistan, Turkey, and she was the third child in a family of 7. Leyla's family left their home village due to Turkish state pressure and had to settle in Mersin like thousands of other Kurdish families. Leyla's life in exile began at the age of 8, when, because of the continued persecution by the Turkish state, her family fled to Germany. When she grew up, she got more involved in the Kurdish political movement and began organizing young women in different cities of Europe, and was a representative of the young Kurdish women's movement in France. A few days after her 24th birthday, Leyla was assassinated in Paris by the Turkish Secret Service on the 9th January 2013, along with Sakine Jansiz and Fidan Dohan, whose stories we've just heard. Leyla dedicated her life for the liberation of the struggle of the Kurdish people. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Athia Sengupta. I'm in London and I am a writer. I'm reading Story 4, Hevrin Khalaf. Hevrin was a politician and human rights activist, born in North Syria in 1984. She studied at the Faculty of Civil Engineering at the University of Aleppo and graduated in 2009. She began her political work at the beginning of the Syrian crisis and was active in human rights and humanitarian institutions. She was elected as Secretary General for the Future Syrian Party after its formation on March 8, 2018. Hevrin was working for a democratic, pluralistic, and decentralized Syria, and was seeking to promote equality between women and men and to guarantee the rights and freedom of all women. On the morning of October 12, 2019, Hevrin was traveling on the M4 road in northern Syria towards her workplace in Raqqa. The factions affiliated with the brigade of the Syrian National Army, who are loyal to and work with Turkey, had lain in wait for her on the road, knowing that she would pass by and ambush her car. She was executed with her driver in the field next to the road. The murderer filmed and boasted of their brutality. Both and local condemnations of the killing and evidence of who killed her and the support the Turkish state gave them, justice is yet to be delivered for Hevrin and her family.
I'm Smitha Tharoor. I'm from India and live in London. I host a podcast called Between Us, Stories of Unconscious Bias. I'm reading story 5, Kevza Eltuk Ekinwan. Kevza was born in 1986 in southeastern Turkey, Kurdistan. She died in the clash between PKK members and Turkish soldiers in August 2015 in North Kurdistan. Kevza's body was displayed naked by the Turkish soldiers, and her photo was shared in social media. The brutality, hatred, and misogyny is particularly evident with Kevza's story. Not only was she murdered, but her corpse was abused and tortured, and her naked, defiled body was displayed in the middle of the street. No one was ever held accountable, neither soldiers who were at the scene, nor the social media services where the photos were distributed. I'm honored to have read this story today.
Hello. Oh, I'm unmuted.
Go ahead, you're good.
Oh, hi. I'm Diane Langford, and I'm reading story number 6. I'm in Kent in England. I'm reading the story of Ceylan Onkol. Ceylan was born in 1997 in southeastern Turkey, Kurdistan. At around 11 o'clock on September the 28th, 2009, 12-year-old Jaylan went out of her house to see her animals and called to her mum to make her pasta. Shortly after she went out, a mortar shell shot from a police station 200 meters from their home exploded, killing Jaylan. After the incident, the prosecutor was informed, but they did not go to the scene on the grounds that the incident was in a terrorist zone and ordered the villagers to collect the body and bring it themselves. Her mum had to collect her body by herself on her skirt and take her to the prosecutor. An independent forensic medicine specialist stated that Jaylan died in a defensive position.
I am Margaret Owen, a British human rights barrister speaking from London. I'm a patron of peace in Kurdistan and president of Widows for Peace Through Democracy. And I've been in Rojava, and I'm so admire all of you Kurdish women. And I'm reading story 7, Teybat Inan. 57-year-old Teybat Inan was a mother of 11 children. She lived in Silopi, Turkey, and a curfew was imposed on the city by the Turkish state on the 14th of December 2015. On the 5th day of the curfew, Teybat was shot in the street by the Turkish army. And after she was shot, she struggled for life for about 6 hours, unable to move or be rescued until she finally lost her life. Teybat's body lay on the street for 7 whole days. Her body could not be recovered because of the siege of the Turkish army, and relatives and acquaintances who tried to recover her body were also shot at and attacked by the Turkish army. And no one has been held accountable for this terrible act of brutality. Thank you.
I'm Sarah Ismail, and I'm in London, and I'm a disability rights campaigner. And I'm reading story number 8, Kader Otakay. Kader, 28, was born to a working class family in Turkey. Kader was an academic who was involved in the labor movement. She studied sociology at Marmara University and was a member of Initiative for a Free Society. On November 6, 2014, the Free Art Initiative tried to reach the border of Kobane through a human chain action. The border had been closed by the Turkish government to prevent humanitarian aid and human rights observations and to cover up Turkey's support for ISIS. The Free Art Initiative action was banned and attacked with tear gas and live ammunition. In this attack, a border guard shot Kader in the head.
I'm Chitra Nagarajan. I'm a feminist, peace builder, and human rights activist, and I'm reading story 9, Baby Solin. Solin was born in a village in Kurdish northern Iraq. She was just 7 months old when Turkish fighter jets targeted a vehicle near her village on the 17th of August 2011. 7 civilians, 4 of them children, were murdered. After the attack, the Turkish state denied the attack took place, but subsequently, Beser Atalay from the AKP ruling party of Turkey confessed to the state's involvement in the attack.
Hello, I'm Pragna Patel, founder and director of Southall Black Sisters in London, and I am reading story 10, Jamila Jayoga. Jamila was 10 years old when she was shot dead outside the door of her home in Cizre, Turkey, northern Kurdistan on September 7th, 2015, when the city was under the Turkish state's curfew. Her mother was nearby and thought she had just fainted. Running over, she held her daughter as she died. She then carried her home. Her family washed her and laid her on her mother's chest and sang lullabies until the morning. The family had to place her in a freezer for 3 days so that her body would not decay while they waited for the deputies to come and take her. Chisra's public prosecutor's office launched an investigation after the incident. Despite all of this time, the perpetrators could not be found.
I am Preeti Manuel, a foster carer and writer in Leeds, UK. I'm reading story 11 of Daria Koch. Daria Koch was 25 years old and the district court chair of the HDP in Milos, a city in Turkey. Daria went to support the resistance of the population of Cizre during the 78-day siege by the Turkish military. She had previously spoken on the phone with the HDP deputies and reported that they had taken refuge in the cellars with 25 other survivors to seek shelter. She also reported that 20 murdered people were in the cellars who had not survived the attacks. She told her colleagues that the Turkish military were bombing the building they were in and called for immediate medical help to get them to the hospital. Their calls were then relayed to the emergency call centers, but to no avail. All the people, as well as those from other buildings, were massacred by the Turkish state. Her body was identified on February 16th, 2016. In Turkey, there is no legal process on this case progressing. As an alternative, the ECHR, the European Convention on Human Rights, has been called upon, but the application has been rejected. Thank you.
I'm Joan Scanlon, a London-based anti-violence against women activist and a supporter of the Kurdish women's liberation movement. I'm reading the story of story number 12 of Aisha Emmet Farhan. Aisha was 17 years old and a high school student living in Maximum refugee camp in northern Iraq in South Kurdistan. The camp is for political refugees and had been bombed 5 times by Turkish warplanes, killing many people. Every day, unmanned aerial vehicles circle over the camp, which have a severe psychological effect on those living there, especially the women and children. On the 15th of April 2020, an unmanned aerial vehicle of the occupying Turkish state targeted and killed 3 young women, including Aisha, who were looking after sheep. 2 of the women were killed immediately, but Aisha was taken to the camp's hospital where they were unable to save her. Their deaths were reported to the United Nations, and Iraqi officials have been following the situation, but so far, no accountability for these crimes has been achieved.
I'm Jocelyn Watson. I live in London. I'm a writer of colour and an activist. I'm reading story 13, Dilak Dawan. Dilak was born in 1991 in a family with a Levi faith. Her family house in Istanbul was searched by the Special Operations on the morning of October the 18th, 2015. The police entered the house, and when asked by Dilak to remove them, the situation became violent, culminating in the police shooting Dilak. She was taken to hospital but died of her injuries. The accused policeman got 7 years and 6 months for willful, negligent murder, but his sentence was later reduced to 6 years and 3 months. Her brother spoke to the press about their dismay at the light sentence the police received for the crime and was arrested for the statements. The family lawyer was also arrested for the statements she said on the case. She went on hunger strike to demand a fair trial, and she died herself.
I'm Lisa Marie, bringing solidarity from Philia, and I'm reading story 14, Asya Yüksel. Asya was born in 1973 in northern Kurdistan, South Turkey. She was married at a young age and became the mother of 2 children. And she dedicated her life, herself, to the fight for women's freedom. She continued her struggle as co-chair of Jezra People's Assembly in 2015. As co-chairwoman of Jezra People's Assembly, one of the first decisions she pushed for was to prohibit the marriage of children. Asia lost her life in one of the cellars of Jezra during the Jezra siege in February 2016, when the Turkish state made one of its most inhumane attacks. Turkish security forces diverted gasoline into a basement where dozens of people were locked up and burned them alive.
I'm Esther from the Women's Stroke Assembly and Kurdistan Solidarity Network, and I'm based in London. I'm reading story 15, Akida Ali Osman. Akida was born in 1966, and she was a Kurdish national figure, fighter, and female activist from North Syria. She was pursued and arrested by the Syrian regime's forces throughout her struggle for women's rights. She decided to wear black from the arrest of Abdullah Öcalan in 1999 and remained faithful to her decision to wear black until the day of her death on October 13th, 2019. She died as a result of the brutal bombing of the Turkish occupation against a convoy of civilians from the north and east of Syria, heading to the city of Serikani in Rojava, northern Syria, to help the people under attack.
I'm Freya Lockley, and I'm reading this story 16, Amina Omar, Berin Kobani. Berin lived with her family in the city of Kobani. When ISIS attacked Kobani, her family was subject to harassment and threats, and her father was kidnapped. Once they paid the ransom, they fled to Afrin. Berin was affected by the ISIS massacres and assassinations and the captivity of women, and wanting to defend democracy and the people of the region. So she joined the Women's Protection Units, the YPJ, and fought ISIS in Kobani and Raqqa. Berin died in February 2018 during the Turkish invasion of Afrin. While fighting Erdogan's mercenaries, she fought until the last moment. Because she didn't want to fall into the hands of the enemy alive, she fired a bullet of mercy on herself. After her dead body fell into their hands, they stripped her of her clothes and tore and mutilated her body.
I'm Nicola Baldwin, a playwright from London, and I'm reading story 17, Fatma Uyar. Fatma was born on the 28th of August, 1988, in a village in Kurdistan, Iraq. After Fatma's birth, her family moved to Silopi in the south of Turkey, where they still live today. In the 2000s, Fatma got to know the political resistance there and joined initially as an active member of the youth movement. In 2009, Fatma was arrested and sentenced to 5 years imprisonment by the Turkish government. After her release in 2010, she returned to political work and was most recently involved in the Congress of Free Women. On the 4th of January 2016, during the Turkish military curfew on Silopi, 3 Kurdish women politicians, including Fatma, were attacked by the Turkish military. Mortally injured, they lay for hours for an ambulance to pick them up. The ambulance did not arrive, and as a result of serious injuries, they died.
I'm Anna from Andalusia, based in Wales, and I'm a member of the Kurdish Solidarity Network in the UK. I'm reading the story 18 of Svi Demir. Svi Demir was born in 1974 in Mardin, southeastern Turkey. She had to emigrate to Manisa, Turkey, in the 90s due to the intensified repression by the state. Here, she worked as an agricultural worker. She was also involved in the foundation of the Free and Democratic Women movement. She was arrested in New Sabine in 2009 and was taken to the E-type prison in Diyarbakir.
was involved in the hunger strikes in 2012. After her release from prison, she took an active role in political affairs as a member of the DVP. On 4th January 2016, during the curfew in the Silopi, she and 3 other women were murdered in cold blood. A Turkish tank targeted these women and their bodies waited for hours for an ambulance which never arrived.
I am Elin Howell, and I'm in Pwllheli, Cymru. I represent Undod, the campaign for radical independence for the benefit of all the people of Wales. And I am honoured to be reading story 19, Paiki's Nair. Paiki's Nair was born in 1989 in the Silopi south-eastern Turkey. Paiki's took over responsibility in the parental home at an early age. She started working in the textile industry at the age of 12. On the one hand, Paiki's took care of her family, and on the other hand, she could not ignore the resistance struggle and was part of the Kurdish freedom movement from a young age. She supported her family by opening a hairdressing salon, and at the same time, she took on political duties as co-chairwoman of Silopi's People's Assembly. On the 4th of January 2016, during the curfew in the Silopi, she was murdered by the Turkish military in cold blood alongside 2 other women political leaders.
I'm Janet Beal, an independent author and artist in the United States. I'm reading story number 20, Zara Barkal. Zara Barkal was born in 1987 in the city of Kobani. She was a member of the coordination of Kongrestar, the Kurdish women's organization in North and East Syria, for the Euphrates region. Zara studied law at the University of Aleppo, and from 2013, she participated in the struggle to improve the lives of women in North and East Syria. In Kobani, she worked at the local Malajin House of Women, and later for Hevesor Akkad, the Kurdish Red Crescent. She became part of Kobani's People's Assembly, and later was elected co-mayor of Kobani. On June 23rd, 2020, a Turkish drone targeted a village near Kobani. It struck the house where Zara was staying, killing the homeowners as well as Zara herself.
Hi, my name is Francesca Scott. I am a representative of the Women Defend Rojava UK committee. There was someone, oh wait, this person's entered the room. Shall I let them in and let them read it? Yeah, sorry, that was in case the person couldn't make it, but introducing Susan, if you'd like to read the story number 21.
Suzanne entered the room. Maybe it's worth repeating the message. Suzanne, would you read story number 21, please, if you're in the room?
Hello, I'm Suzanne Sevgi, and I would like to read just need to unmute myself, excuse me.
You are unmuted.
Thank you, just wanted to check. Sorry about that. I am Suzanne Sevgi and I'm reading story 21, Amina
Waisi. Amina Mohammed Waisi was born in 1965 and was from a village near the city of Kobani. She was a mother to 5 children. She took part in all activities of the women's movement and devoted all her energy to the revolution. On June 23rd, a Turkish drone targeted her house, killing her and her guests and injuring her daughter.
I think the person reading this message is unable to attend, so I will read on behalf of them. So this is story number 22, the story of Hadiye Shen. Hadiye Shen was born in 1983, southeastern Turkey, and taught in the Quran school in Cizre. She was a mother to 3 children. On the evening of 16th December 2015, Hadiye Shen walked out of her home and was attacked by the Turkish security forces. There was no conflict in the area at the time, and the attack was completely out of the blue. In total, she was hit by 8 bullets. 6 bullets hit her in the face and neck area, 1 in the left shoulder, and 1 in the right abdominal cavity. And 1 of the bullets had cut her throat. For half an hour, she struggled for breath and suffered before she died. Her husband called the police, who told him they would not come. Her body had to stay in the yard all night because the called ambulance could not come. When the imam wanted to come to assist the family, he too was shot.
Hi, my name is Faiza Mahmood and I'll be reading story 23, Fatima Kana. Fatima Kana was 80 years old from a village Afrin in Rojava, northern Syria. Fatima was strangled to death on the 18th April 2020 by members of the armed Syrian opposition, supported by the Turkish occupation that have controlled the village since the Turkish invasion. They strangled her to death and stole her jewellery and money. They then arrested her children, Fauzi, Hanan and Muhammad, and a number of other residents of the village under the pretext that they are being investigated for her murder.
Hi, I'm Alice and I'm part of Plan C and Reclaim the Power in the UK and a climate justice activist with Enda Galenda, and I'm based in Sheffield. I'm reading story 24 of Gulistan Doku. Gulistan was 21 years old, studying children's education at the vocational school in Dersim, Turkey, when she went missing. She has not been seen since, leaving her student residence. During investigations, a name and a suspect were found, but their names were censored. Questions in Parliament on the resolution of this crime remain unanswered. The authorities apparently can find no trace of her movements, even though almost every area of Dersim province is monitored 24 hours a day with cameras and microphones. Women's organisations suspect it is a violent crime that is being covered up by the security apparatus.
Hello.
Oh, sorry, do we have Harriet?
I don't think so. I was
Okay.
just going to ask you to read it.
So, apologies, my neighbours are unfortunately doing work on their wall, so apologies for any disturbances. Berjan Demirkaya was born in 1977 in a village in southeastern Turkey. Berjan was a founding member of the Democratic Society Party at the age of 28. Berjan overcame the feudal prejudices, convinced society with her work. She concentrated on women's studies and took an active role in the Congress of Free Women, the KJA. The KJA was subsequently banned in Turkey. In January 2015, as curfews and operations continued throughout Kurdish cities in Turkey, Berjan was alongside 31 civilians, including injured and children who had fled the conflict, seeking shelter in the basement of an apartment building in the province of Silopi. They were all including Bergin, murdered and their corpses found burnt.
Hello, I'm Catherine Mayer. I'm in London. I'm an author, journalist, and the co-founder of the Women's Equality Party and Prima Donna Festival. And I'm reading story 26. This is what happened to Horia Mohammed Barkar. Horia was from a village in Afrin, Rojava, North Syria. She lost her life at the age of 74 as a result of torture and beatings in Afrin by the Turkish-backed Levantine Front faction. As a result of the severe beating, her kidney wall was ruptured and continued bleeding until her life ended.
Hello. Okay.
Just read, Aisha.
Hi, good evening. My name is Aisha Gill. I'm a criminologist based in London, and I'm reading the story of Sonia Samal. On the 21st of August, 2011, after 5 days of attack, the Turkish fighter jets targeted a vehicle near the village of Boley Kotak in Suleymaniye in northern Iraq. 7 civilians, 4 of them children, were murdered. Sonia Samal was one of those children. She was 4 years old. She was killed by the Turkish armed forces. A statement by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs denied the killing. They alleged that no civilians died in the air bombing. Remember her name, Sonia Samal. Did you?
Is Poonam Joshi in the room? I think not. Somebody else needs to read this. Is it Frankie? Is it you?
Sorry, did you? Sorry, it's Aisha. Did you get that one? Sorry about this. I don't know what's happening with my.
Yeah, that was perfect. That was perfect. Thank you so much.
Sorry about that.
Yes. So Poonam Joshi, who was supposed to read number 28, unfortunately can't make it. So I will read this one. Hanifa Ali was born in Aleppo in 1982. In early September 2009, chemical warfare agents were discharged by Turkish soldiers into a cave near the town of Sakuksa, southeast Turkey. Hanife, alongside 8 others, died as a result. Eyewitnesses say that the bodies were then run over by heavy vehicles. Turkish authorities are keeping the autopsy reports and files on this case confidential. Political demands from Germany and the European Parliament for an international investigation have also been rejected.
Hello. Hello.
Go ahead.
Hello.
Hello.
Alex, we can hear you, Alex. Go ahead.
I'm here. I'm here. Alex Davis here. I'm Alex Davis, and I'm an artist in Canada. I'm reading story number 29, İpek AR. İpek was Kurdish and lived in Baban in southeastern Turkey. She was only 18 years old when she took her own life after being raped by a Turkish sergeant. The perpetrator, an avowed supporter of the extreme right-wing Grey Wolves, was briefly arrested, but was released despite the indisputable forensic evidence. Following massive protests by the population, he was arrested again on 19th of August. A week later, however, he was released by court order. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Yasmin Raymond. I'm a women's human rights activist and chief exec of Juno Women's Aid in Nottingham in the UK. I'm honoured to be reading the story of Medea Khalil. Medea Khalil came from Tal Abyad. She worked in the ambulance department of the Kurdish Red Crescent and a military hospital. On October 13th, 2019, members of an extremist faction who were supported by the Turkish state intercepted the ambulance of the Kurdish Red Crescent near the town of Sulek and murdered Mediha.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Roshanara Reza and I'm a community activist. I live in Portsmouth and I'm also a foster carer, and I'm reading story 31, Nadira Kadyrova. Nadira was born in 1996 in Uzbekistan. In order to save money for her studies, she started working as a caretaker at the Ankara house of Sirin Unal, the Istanbul deputy of the ruling AKP party. In September 2019, she called her boyfriend to tell him that Sirin Unal had been harassing her. She had already told her brother, who also lived in Turkey, that she was not safe in the job and said, "If I talk, there will be consequences for me and us." She was later found dead. The Ankara Prosecutor's General Office concluded that Nadira committed suicide and decided that there was no room for prosecution. The courts ignored forensic evidence confirming she was sexually assaulted, and some of the key personal belongings were hidden from the family. This is a clear case of murder being covered up by the Turkish government. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Leslie Allen, a supporter in London, and I'm reading story 32, The Women Who Lost Their Lives in Ankara during 10th of October 2015 massacre. On 10th of October 2015, 103 people were killed in an attack in a peace rally taking place at the crossroads at Ankara station. Investigations against 36 people revealed that the order for the attack came from ISIS in Turkey. Of these 36 persons, 19 are under arrest and 17 are on the run. In the trial that followed, victims' lawyers demanded that the case be extended to civil servants and that the attack be assessed as a crime against humanity. They also demanded that all links of the defendants to ISIS be clearly disclosed. However, the court ignored these requests. 30 women lost their lives in the attack, including students, political activists, politicians, trade unionists, an actress, and a mother of peace. Thank you.
I am Julie Ward, a poet, a member of Unite the Union, and a former member of the European Parliament, representing the northwest of England for the Labour Party from 2014 to January 2020. I'm also a patron of peace in Kurdistan, and I led a women's peace mission to Rojava in May 2018. I'm reading story 33, Amina Mohammed Mardini. Amina was 77 years old, from Rojava, Syria, and a much treasured housewife. She was killed in Kamishli on the 10th of October 2019, following the Turkish invasion of northeastern Syria, Rojava, that began the day before.
I am Debbie Bookchin, a journalist and author and based in New York City and a co-founder of the Emergency Committee for Rojava. I am reading the story 34 of Amara Reynas. On the 21st of October 2019, against the backdrop of the ceasefire agreement following the Turkish invasion of Rojava, Turkish militia militants launched attacks on the site of YPJ fighters, and as a result, A group of Women's Protection Unit's forces responded to this attack and defended themselves, the people, and the land. Among this group was Amara, who was captured and killed by Turkish militants in a village in Kobani. The Turkish militants there then abused her body while cheering their victory.
Hello, I'm Liz Morrison. I live in London and I'm a retired social worker. I'm reading story 35, Tulen Beru. Tulen Beru was 16, lived in the Sherawa district of Afrin Rojava. She was married and had a son. They all lost their lives in 2018 as a result of a landmine planted by the Ara al-Sarkiya faction and the Suleiman Shah faction, both of which are backed by the Turkish state. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Anna Zobnina. I am from Russia and I live in Edinburgh, and I am the coordinator of the European Network of Migrant Women. And I'm reading the story 36 of Gulistan Hassan. Gulistan Hassan lost her life in November 2013 because of a terrorist bombing in the military hospital in Kobani in Rojava. Kobani at that time was under siege by ISIS, and Turkey, despite refusing to let Kurdish people from Turkey cross the border to help defend the city, was actively helping ISIS enter the city through the Turkish border.
Hello, I am Suman Butcher and I'm reading story 37, Layla Hanan. Layla Hanan was born in Afrin, Rojava in 1976. She was killed in fighting in southeastern Turkey in Ajiri in 2008. After she was killed, a group of soldiers from the Turkish State Army found her body, took photos of her corpse as they posed with weapons and took bits of her clothing as trophies.
Hello, I'm Shakila Maan, based in London. I'm an artist and filmmaker and also a member of South of Black Sisters. I'm reading story number 38, Ramzieh Bor. Ramzieh Bor was born in 1988 in the village of Kadire in Turkey. On the 18th of April, 2016, a team of police special forces broke down the door of her house and burst in, opening fire. She held her hands in the air and told the police that she was pregnant. She was held in a house for 3 hours before being taken to hospital. After 28 days in intensive care, she died of her injuries. Her child was saved by cesarean section and survived. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Fiona Hale. I'm in London and I'm an HIV and women's rights activist. And I'm reading story 39, Dilavan Ismet Rashid. Dilavan Ismet Rashid was 25 years old and from the village in Afrin Canton, Rojava. In 2018, during the Turkish invasion, she tried to flee from Afrin into Turkey, but was shot by Turkish State Army border guards while trying to cross the border with her 2 children.
Hello, my name is Hozan Mahmoud. I'm a Kurdish feminist and editor of Kurdish Women's Stories, a book that was published recently. I'm honored to be reading story number 40, which is a story of Badia Khalil. Badia Khalil, a member of Congress Star Women's Movement, was born in 1979 near the city of Kobani, Rojava. In 2014, Badia joined the ranks of the YPJ to defend her people and land against the ISIS attack on Kobani. On June 23, 2020, a Turkish drone targeted the house in a village near of Kobani, where she was meeting with 2 other women. All of the women were killed. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Tamsin Larby. I'm a feminist activist.
and writer. I'm reading the story 41, Kurdistan Abdullah. Kurdistan Abdullah's family was returning home after a day trip in Kurdish Iraq, southern Kurdistan, in May 2019. They were hit by bombing as part of the Turkish state's army Operation Claw. Her father and little brother were also killed.
Hello, I'm Paula Travis. I'm from Germany. I'm reading story number 42, Rezan Hussein. Rezan was killed in August 2011 on the 5th day of Turkish state army attacks into Kurdish Iraq, southern Kurdistan. She was 34 years old and pregnant, and she was killed alongside 6 other civilians, 4 of them children.
Is Beatrix Campbell here?
I am. Hello.
Great. Go ahead.
My name is Beatrix Campbell. I'm a writer and a leftist and feminist activist and great friend of Rahila Gupta and Southall Black Sisters. I'm reading story 43, Asiya Awai Mahind. Like many other Kurdish mothers, in 1994, Mother Asiya was forcibly displaced by Kurdish guards and became a refugee in Kurdish Iraq, southern Kurdistan. She lived in Maxmur refugee camp, and she was killed by bombing of the camp by Turkish state army warplanes. Her family grazed animals in the surroundings of the camp to generate income. She was killed while looking after the animals.
Hello, I'm Judith Jones, here in France with Beatrix Campbell. Our pictures aren't coming up, so I don't know why that is, but I'm a social worker, writer, and feminist activist. And I'm reading story 44, Narinj Ferhan Karsim. Narinj was born in 1991 in the southern Kurdistan, Kurdish Iraq. At the age of 3, she was displaced from her home and became a refugee, ending up at Maxmur refugee camp. She completed most of high school, but was forced to drop out so that she could help her mother. In 2018, she was killed by an airstrike from Turkish army warplanes while she was looking after sheep with her mother, Asiya, and daughter. Thank you.
Hi everybody. My name is Camilla Zampiero. I'm from Italy and I'm part of GINNET in the city of Milan. And I'm reading the story 45, Evin Kalva Mehmood. Evin lost her mother when she was 6 years old and she was raised by her grandmother. She lived in the Mahmoud refugee camp and was helping to look after the herd animals when she was killed by Turkish airstrike. She was 14 years old.
I am Jessica Todaro, a member of British GIN. I'm from Italy. And I'm reading story 46, Pakis Hazar. Pakis was forced to flee her home village in Turkey in the 1990s and moved to the city of Diyarbakir. Pakis was 85 years old and went to the bank to withdraw her pension. As she was crossing a street that was meant to be closed to vehicle traffic, she was hit by a Turkish military armored vehicle and killed.
Hello, my name is Laura Quagliuolo. I'm from Italy, activist of GNet and of the campaign Freedom for Rojava. I'm reading story number 47, Dilan Kortak. Dilan was the youngest of 6 children and left high school early after the death of her mother. In 2015, when she was 18 years old, she was in a flat in Istanbul that was raided by Turkish state security forces, and she was killed. The autopsy report showed that she had been shot at close range in the head by 1 bullet and from a longer distance by 25 others.
I am Frederike Gerink. I'm a journalist and writer, and I'm reading story 48, Eylem Mehmet Emmer. Eylem lost her father at a very young age and lived with her mother, sisters, and brothers in Mahmur refugee camp. She continued her studies up to high school, and after high school, she supported her family, helping her mother and taking care of her brothers. She was killed in the December 2018 bombings of the refugee camp by Turkish army warplanes while she was looking after herd animals.
Hello.
Go ahead. Go
Sorry.
ahead.
I'm Sue O'Sullivan. I'm in London, and I'm reading story 49, Iman Ibrahim. Iman Ibrahim was a 24-year-old from Kamishlo, Rojava. She was married and had a 2-year-old daughter. In October 2019, during the Turkish invasion of northeast Syria, she was shot by a Turkish sniper from the other side of the border wall between Rojava and Turkey. She was getting bread from the bakery in the morning.
Hi, my name's Charlotte Grace. I'm a member of the Kurdish Solidarity Network, and it's an honour and a tragedy, obviously, to read these stories. I'm going to be reading story number 50 about sisters Jamila Musa and Kadia Musa. Jamila, who was 35 years old, and Kadia, who was 48, lived in Sarakani in Rojava. They did not flee the city whilst it was invaded and occupied by the Turkish state because they did not want to leave their land. One evening in January 2020, members of an armed faction entered their house and shot both of them.
I'm Pelsheen, and I'm reading story 51, Polen Unlu. Polen was a 23-year-old student of philosophy at Istanbul University. Although she was not Kurdish, she decided to join the Federation of Socialist Youth Association's humanitarian convoy to Kobani in September 2015 after its destruction by ISIS. As the convoy prepared to leave, it was targeted by an ISIS bombing and 33 young people were killed. A legal case was brought against local Turkey police and officials for negligence and misconduct.
I'm Holly. I live near Carnarvon, Cymru, Wales, and I work for the Land Workers Alliance. I'm reading story 52, Nazaya Gül Boyraz. Nazaya Gül joined the humanitarian convoy to Kobani from Turkey in 2015. She was a 55-year-old mother and a member of the Republican People's Party in Turkey. She was killed in the ISIS attack on the gathered convoy during a press conference before their departure from Suruç. Whilst there have been convictions for the attackers, the Turkish police have only received fines or charges for misconduct for failing to respond appropriately for the attack.
I'm Katka Vrablikova, activist and academic from Bristol, UK, and I'm reading story 53, Nazli Akierek. Nazli was a 20-year-old woman killed by an ISIS bomb in the South Turkey on 20 July 2015. She had responded to a call for solidarity with the majority Kurdish city that was attacked by ISIS and which mounted a heroic fight back, turning the tide against ISIS. Nazli was a part of a gathering of youth who were going to take humanitarian aid and to assist with the rebuilding of the city when the ISIS bomb exploded. She and 32 others were killed. 3 police officers were charged with misconduct, as the mainly Kurdish youth were left exposed to the ISIS threat.
Is Emily here? I think Emily can't make it, so I'm going to read story number 54, Bekreya Ece Dinç. Bekreya was 20 years old when she was killed by the ISIS bomb along with 32 others. The district police president and 2 other police officers faced trial for negligence and misconduct for the way that the ISIS threat against the Kurdish youth was handled. Jill, is Jill here? Okay, I will read the next one as well. Bushra Mete. Bushra was 20 years old and a student when she was killed by the ISIS bomb, again, along with the 32 others. She was a student of journalism at Istanbul University and had responded to the call by the Federation of Socialist Youth Clubs to gather to take humanitarian aid to Syria and to help with the reconstruction of Kobane after the ISIS attack. Local police officers were prosecuted for the negligent way in which they failed to protect Busra and her friends from a widely anticipated ISIS attack.
I'm Vicky Blake, feminist and trade unionist from the University and College Union in the UK, and I'm reading Story 56, Doigu Tuna. Doigu, aged 20, responded to the call for solidarity and was killed by the ISIS bomb on the 20th of July 2015. She intended to assist with the reconstruction in Syria and to take humanitarian aid. Only one person stood trial for this crime, with 2 other perpetrators escaping over the border to Syria. Local Turkish police officers were found guilty of negligence and misconduct.
Number 57, Helen, are you here?
Okay. I can read it if Helen's not here.
Okay.
My name is Vian and I'm on the Women Defend Rojava UK committee and also an internationalist with the Kurdistan Women's Movement. I'm reading the story of Aydan Ezgi Salci. Aydan was 19 years old when she was killed by the ISIS bomb on the 20th of July 2015. She was an activist and organizer for women's freedom and for LGBT rights. Only one of the alleged perpetrators of the attack was brought to trial for an attack that came about largely due to the negligence and misconduct of the local police force. 300 young people had gathered that day at the Amara Cultural Center to hold a press conference before their departure for Syria.
Hi, I'm Trisha Durkin. I'm an artist bringing solidarity from Swansea in Wales. And I'm reading story number 58, Verdane Kello Och. Verdane was an activist and politician. She became the Speaker of the Socialist Women's Assembly in Turkey and participated in the founding processes of the Democratic Congress of Peoples and the Democratic Party of Peoples, the HDP. She was elected as co-mayor for the HDP in the local elections of 2015. On the 20th of July 2015, she was killed by the ISIS bomb, due in large part to the failings of local police.
Hi, my name is Paula Brennan from United Union in Ireland, and I'm reading story 59 of Hatice Ece Sadat. Hatice was 20 years old and a university student in Turkey and an activist for women's freedom. She was moved to go to a gathering on the 20th of July 2015 in order to take humanitarian aid and assistance to the site of the heroic resistance to ISIS, which marked the turning point of the conflict. She was one of 33 killed in the bombing. Only one of the alleged perpetrators of this attack was brought to trial for an attack that came about largely due to the negligence and misconduct of the local police force.
I'm Teresa Easton from Arts Union England, based in Newcastle upon Tyne. I'm reading story 60, Nuri Koca. Nuri was a law student studying at university in Turkey and was amongst those who responded to the call. The attack occurred when 300 young people gathered at the cultural centre to hold a press conference before the departure for Syria. The planned trip to northern Syria was intended to be an act of solidarity. The young people wanted to take children's toys and humanitarian aid supplies to the city destroyed by ISIS.
Go ahead, Christine.
I'm Christine Blower. I'm from the Freedom for Rojava campaign in London, reading story 61, Baharin Perno. Baharin was an artist who lived with her family in a small village in the Afrin region of Rojava, northeast Syria, an area illegally occupied by Turkish forces since the invasion at the start of 2018. On June 4th, 2018, she crossed a checkpoint in Rojava and was shot in the chest 5 times by Turkish militia. She later died in hospital.
I'm Sarah Woolley, General Secretary of the Bakers Food and Allied Workers Union, reading story 62, Malak Nebi Khalil Juma. Malak was 16 years old and from a Syrian village occupied by Turkish forces. She was kidnapped by the Sultan Murad division, loyal to the Turkish occupation, and her dead body was found on the countryside of Aleppo on the 7th of June, 2020.
Hello, I am Jane Taylor from Unite the Union, and I'm reading story 63, Haywa Emerson Hassan. Haywa was aged 32 years. She had to support a household by taking care of sheep. After leaving school, she worked at various jobs, most recently as a shepherdess. On the 15th of April 2020, she was killed by Turkish warplanes, carrying out aerial bombardments around a refugee camp in northern Iraq. The camp holds political refugees, and these illegal attacks are taking place under the observation of the United Nations. The camp has been bombed 5 times by warplanes of the Turkish state, causing many deaths and losses. For the last 4 years, every day, unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, circle over the camp.
I'm Steffi Domike. I'm a labor educator and artist from Pennsylvania, United States, and I'm honored to be reading story number 64 about Ezime Tahir Ferman. Ezime became a refugee in 1997. She was a young woman who made ends meet by working at the sheep pen and was targeted and killed alongside 2 other women on the 15th of April, 2020, attacked by warplanes of the Turkish state. Without a doubt, the unmanned aerial vehicles circling above the refugee camp have a big psychological impact on the people, especially the children who are negatively affected by the aircraft. There are almost 4,000 school students at the camp, and every day the UAV drones circle over the camp. These children experience the negative psychological effects. It's women and children who experience the damage and loss the most.
Hello, I'm Gaynell Samuel from the Public and Commercial Services Union, and I'm reading story 65, Hajir Arslan. Hajir, aged 23, was killed on a date unknown between the 7th and 12th of February 2016 in southeast Turkey. She was one of 137 people who died in the 3 cellars where people had sought sanctuary from the Turkish bombing. It is not known whether she died as a result of the bombing or whether she died when the authorities diverted a gas line into the cellars and burned alive those who had survived thus far.
I am Carmela Murtrillo, a London-based teacher, and I'm reading story 66, Meryem Akyol. Meryem, aged 23, was killed on a date unknown between the 7th and the 12th of February 2016 in southeast Turkey. She, like Hajar Arslan, was one of the 137 people who died in the 3 cellars where people had sought sanctuary from the Turkish bombing. It is not known whether she died as a result of the bombing or whether she died when the authorities diverted a gas line into the cellars and burned alive those who had survived thus far.
Hi, I'm Natasha Wolf and I'm in London. I'm a feminist. I stand in solidarity with Kurdish women. I am reading the story 67 about Gülistan Üstün. Gülistan was killed on a date unknown between the 7th and 12th of February 2016, also in southeast Turkey. She, like Hajar Aslan, was one of 137 people who died in the 3 cellars where people had sought sanctuary from the Turkish bombing. It is not known whether she died as a result of the bombing or whether she died, like many others, when the authorities diverted a gas line into the cellars and burnt alive those who had survived thus far. Thank you.
I'm going to read the next one. I'm Melanie Gingell from Peace in Kurdistan. Sakina Sire was killed on a date unknown between the 7th and the 12th of February 2016 in Cizre in southeast Turkey. She, like the women above, was one of the 137 people who died in one of the 3 cellars where people had sought sanctuary from the Turkish bombing. It is not known whether she died as a result of the bombing or whether she died when the authorities diverted a gas line into the cellars and burned alive those who had survived thus far. This incident in Cizre was one of the most cruel mass executions of these times, and to date, no one has been held accountable for this atrocity. Layla, is Layla here? Okay, I'm going to read the next one. Story 69, Meryem Sune. Meryem was 45 years old. She was killed by a Turkish sniper on September the 8th, 2015, in the courtyard of her own house during a state-imposed curfew. Although all authorities, including the district governor, security forces, gendarmerie, and ambulance were called, she lost her life because she did not receive medical attention for 2.5 hours. Her body had to be kept in the house during the night after she lost her life. She was then taken to a cold storage facility and later to the mortuary of the state hospital.
Hello, I'm Sonali Naik. I'm a UK human rights lawyer, and I've had the privilege to spend the last 30 years representing asylum seekers and refugees fleeing persecution from all around the world, including many Kurdish people. I'm reading the story number 70 of Alia Timur. Alia was a PKK fighter, and she was killed along with her comrades by exposure to chemical weapons in a cave in September 2009 in southeastern Turkey. In military operations, the use of prohibited chemical means of warfare is a war crime, and Turkey is a signatory to the UN Chemical Weapons Convention. A truck was driven over their corpses until their limbs were severed. Thank you.
I'm Lorena Levy. I'm based in London at the moment, and I'm an artist. I'm reading story 71, Zozan Bolu. Zozan was from Rojava, northern Syria. She lost her life in a terrorist bombing of the military hospital in Kobani on the 11th of November, 2013. Thank you.
Hello, I am Nurashan Mirza. I'm based in London at the moment, filmmaker, and I'm reading story 72, Susan Jamil Suleiman. Susan from Rojava was 46 years old when she lost her life on the 22nd of August, 2018, due to shrapnel lodged in the leg and foot as a result of the Turkish shelling on her village in northeast Syria. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Tony Valeriana, and I'm the Inclusion Manager at a London school. I'm reading story 73, Almaz Sheikhu Horo. Almaz was 50 years old when she was killed by Turkish bombing on Rojava on the 23rd of January, 2018.
Hello, I'm Fiona Broadfoot from Bradford in the UK. I'm a sex trade survivor, abolitionist, and the founder of Build a Girl UK. And I'm reading story 74, Sultana Nasiru. Sultana died on the 7th of August 2018 in Rojava as a result of serious injuries caused by the leader of the Islamist mercenaries, including ISIS, under the command of the Turkish army.
Hi, my name is Linda Tagurian. I'm a public school educator in the United States, and I am reading story 75, Aisha Hanan. Aisha was an 80-year-old woman from Rojava and was suffocated to death on 8th of November 2018 by Islamist mercenaries, including ISIS, under the command of the Turkish army, who was robbed of her jewelry.
Good evening. Thank you all for this powerful gathering. I am Havin Ganasa from the International Initiative, Freedom for Abdullah Öcalan, Peace in Kurdistan, and I am reading story 76, Zainab Mustafa Musa. Zainab from Afrin Rojava in northeast Syria died on 24th of September 2019 following a head injury when her house was bombed by Turkey.
Is Jane Edgerton here? Okay, I'll read story number 77, Fatima Obeid Hamdan. Fatima lives in that part of Rojava that is under Turkish occupation. She was targeted and killed on 18th August 2020 by a soldier at security checkpoints stationed outside her village while returning from Raqqa. 78, Eliza Griswold. Okay, I shall read number 78 as well. Sabiha Sido Sadiq. Sabiha from Rojava was killed on 23rd July 2019 during violent clashes between two armed groups affiliated with Islamist fighters loyal to the Turkish occupation. '79, Sarah Day. Sarah Day, are you around? Okay.
You want me to do this one?
Sorry?
You want me to do this one?
Okay, sure.
I'll read the story of Zulekhan Hassan Junaid. Zulekhan from Rojava died on the 1st of December 2019 when armed factions of the Turkish occupation kidnapped her and left her corpse in a neighboring village.
Hello, I'm Shravani Vasu. I'm an author and a journalist. I live in London, and I'm honored here today to read story 80, Feride Yildiz. Feride, a 36-year-old woman from North Kurdistan, Turkey, an artist and teacher, was killed on 7th February 2016 in one of the most horrific massacres of Kurdish people by the Turkish state. She was popular for her kindness and her artistic skills. Along with many others, she had taken refuge from the Turkish army in the cellars of 3 buildings in the town of Cizre. The Turkish army bombed the buildings and then poured petrol into the cellars and burned alive those who had survived the bombing.
Ifra Ahmed.
Hi, good evening. Thank you so much for inviting me to this powerful gathering. I'm Ifra Ahmed. I'm reading 81. Helen Hessen. Helen was 12 years old, the oldest of 3 children in her family. Attended secondary school in North Kurdistan in Turkey. She left house on 12 October 2015 during the crop to go and buy bread. She was shot from an armed Cobra vehicle, murdered by police bullet. At the last hearing of the trial in June 2020, it was decided to suspend the trial against a police officer, Abdul E., who had been charged with neglect homicide.
My name is Clyde Wallace Aramian. I'm based in London, and I study the role of cultural heritage in conflict and post-conflict peace building. And I'm reading story number 82 about Rosaran Çokoş. 17-year-old Rosaran lived in northern Kurdistan, Turkey, one of 3 children. She was preparing for college. She painted, wrote stories, and took photos, and she dreamed of becoming a psychiatrist. She was killed on 8th January 2016. Rosaran's corpse was delivered to the Çokoş family 6 months after the incident. While murders of Rosaran Çokoş have not yet been brought before the judiciary, all applications by her father to find his daughter's killers have not only been rejected, but he is now under investigation for pursuing her killers.
I am Marta Núñez. I am Marta Núñez.
Go ahead.
Yes, I'm Marta Núñez, Latino American and based in London. And I'm reading the story 83 about Sheriban Altisnik. Sheriban was born in 1992 and displaced when she was just 2 years old. This was because of the repression faced by her family from the village guard system. This village guard system was created by the central government, settling Kurd against Kurd by recruiting a paid civilian militia to monitor and take action against fellow Kurds. When Shehriban moved to Istanbul and became political activist in the struggle for liberation, she was arrested and subjected to severe torture. In her prison notebook, she wrote, "I love life enough to die for its sake, as long as it is for the right reasons. Have you ever felt freedom, or have you ever felt freedom close to you?" She was killed in 2016 during a military siege.
Hello, I am Rashmi Varma. I live in London. I'm an academic, and I'm honored to be reading story 84, Selamet Yesilmen. Selamet was 44 years old and lived in North Kurdistan, southeast Turkey, with her 5 children. She was killed on 6 November 2015 in front of her house during a curfew. The autopsy report found metal fragments lodged in her chin, thighs, and internal organs. Although a neighbor witnessed the presence of armored vehicles across the street at the time of the incident, the public prosecutor's office refused to investigate, saying, "There is not enough evidence. We cannot find the perpetrators."
I'm Frankie Green. I'm in England, and I am a feminist and a member of the Palestine Solidarity Campaign. And I am reading story 85, Fatima Hamaki. Fatima lived in Rojava and died at the age of 66 on the 27th of June, 2020. A hand grenade was thrown into her house when she refused to move out and make way for jihadi settlers during the first military occupation of Syrian territory by Turkey.
Caroline Bold, are you there? Okay, I'll read the story. Number 86, Hadia Ahmed Murad Musa. Hadia from Rojava was shot dead on 9th February 2019 by Turkish soldiers while crossing the Syrian-Turkish border. Naomi McConway.
I'm Naomi McConway, and I'm reading story 87.
We can't hear you. Could you increase your volume?
I'm reading story 87, Lavin Khalil Nuri. Lavin from Western Syria was shot dead by Turkish soldiers on the 8th of February 2019 while trying to cross the Turkish border with their family.
Rita Lavin.
I'm here. I'm Rita Lavin, and I'm reading from my home in London, story 88, Zainab Tashken. Zainab was 17 years old when she was murdered in Cizre, southeastern Turkey, on the 7th of September 2015. Zainab was carrying her baby in her arms when she was murdered by Turkish security forces in front of the house of relatives in Cizre. During the curfew on September 7th, 2015, her baby was also injured in this attack. After Zainab's death became known, workers in Germany wrote an open letter to Chancellor Merkel to demand justice and an end to violence of Turkish security forces.
I'm Sally Jackson from Portsmouth, UK. I'm a women's rights activist working with Filia. And I'm honoured to read story 89, Zeynep Yilmaz. Zeynep was 77 in southeastern Turkey and was killed on the 20th of December 2016 at the age of 40 in Cizre, southeastern Turkey. Zeynep was shot from an armoured car by the Turkish security forces. Turkey did not let journalists or independent observers into Cizre during the siege and curfews that took place in 12 months of fighting. Turkey used tanks and helicopter gunships to attack its own citizens in Cizre, destroying homes and apartment blocks. Hundreds of civilians were killed by the state.
Hello, I'm Eleanor Finley, and I'm Eleanor Finley. I'm an activist from the United States living in Italy, and I'm reading story 90, Yasmin Chikmaz. Yasmin Chikmaz was 16 years old when she was murdered in Cizre, southeastern Turkey, during the curfew of July 12th, of the 7th to the 12th February 2016. During that time, 137 people lost their lives in the cellars of 3 buildings. Several people from the cellars tried to call for help over the phone and contacted HDP members of the parliament, the media, and even the European Parliament. They reported that they had taken refuge in the cellars in order to seek shelter from attack. They reported that the Turkish military were bombing the building they were in and called for immediate medical help to get them to the hospital. All people in those cellars were massacred by the Turkish state. Knowing then that people were trapped by their calls for help, Turkish security forces diverted gasoline into the basement where dozens of people were locked up and burned them alive. After this horrific mass execution of the people and the destruction of the buildings, the Turkish state had several buildings built on top of the ruins to prevent the collective memory of the cruel massacre in the cellars of Cizre.
My name's Rosa Benathan. I live in London and I am reading Story 91, Juria Ali Irfan. Juria was 28 when she was murdered in Afrin, northern Syria on the 28th of January 2018. In January 2018, the Turkish military launched an illegal invasion of the Turkish canton of Afrin. 6,000 Turkish troops and 10,000 jihadists were supported by armor and airstrikes as President Erdogan escalated his war on the Kurds into Syria. The fall of Afrin was immediately followed by ethnic cleansing, which Kurdish defense units continue to resist. Juria lost her life as a result of the Turkish bombing of a village in Afrin.
Number 92. Okay, I'm Geeta Zainalani, a member of Women Defend Rojava Committee UK. I'm reading number 92, Rania Mohammed Hamade. Rania was 20 years old when she was murdered in Afrin, northern Syria on the 14th March 2018. The culmination of the armed conflict against the Kurdish liberation movement under President Erdogan became overt when the Turkish military invaded the Kurdish canton of Afrin in 2018, taking Erdogan's and Turkey's war against the Kurds outside of the republic. Rania Mohammed lost her life after the Turkish artillery bombed various neighborhoods in Afrin.
I'm Hannah Balaban Palmier. I am from Toronto, Ontario, and I'm honored to read the story 93, Hevin Mustafa Klo. Hevin was 17 years old when she was killed in Afrin on the 16th of March 2018 during the Turkish artillery bombardment on civilians in the Mahmoudiya neighborhood in the city of in the center of Afrin city. The attack lasted for the whole of the 16th of March, trapping people in the area. The hospitals were overcrowded with the injured, and they were not able to send people out because the area was besieged by the attacks of the Turkish state.
Hi, I'm Jessica, and I work in the field of migration. I'm reading the story 94 of Laila Ibrahim Marma. Laila was 19 years old when she died on the 3rd of October 2020. Laila was from a village in Rojava and was kidnapped by the invading militia forces of the Turkish state. Laila could not bear the sufferings during her ordeal and poisoned herself rather than continue being a captive. Since the Turkish state and its jihadi proxy forces began invading Rojava, kidnapping and disappearances of women have dramatically increased to a level not seen since ISIS.
Hi, I'm Sylvia and I'm honored to be reading Story 95, Hanadi Kino. Hanadi was 15 years old when she was killed on the 21st of January 2018 during the Turkish bombing of Afrin. Unscathed through much of the Syrian war, Afrin was a haven of peace and a sanctuary for refugees. The Turkish invasion in January 2018 led to Afrin becoming a dangerous place for women, while Erdogan ethnically cleansed the canton, claiming he will return Afrin to its rightful owners. The Turkish occupation state atrocities committed against the civilians of Afrin has been met with international and NGO silence.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I am Rosh, and I am the co-chair of the Kurdish Women's Initiative. And I am reading story 96, and Nazim Yusuf. Nazim was 16 years old when she was killed. She was from Afrin in Rojava, North Syria, and died there on January 25, 2018, when Turkey bombed the district where she and her family lived. The invasion of Afrin, North Syria, by the Turkish state and associate militant groups in 2018 were a flagrant violation of human rights and international humanitarian law. Thank you.
Number 97, anybody? Okay, I'll read that. I'm Claire Baker. I'm a member of the Women Defend Rojava Committee, and I'm reading number 97, Badriya Al-Abdullah. Badriya was 18 years old when she was murdered on the 28th of January 2018. Badriya was from a village in Afrin Rojava, northern Syria, and was killed during the invasion of Afrin by Turkey and died of injuries to her leg in a bomb attack. The hostilities by the Turkish state against Afrin exceeded the declared objective of the operation by targeting civilians and the infrastructure, including mosques, as well as the destruction of archaeological sites and the use of internationally prohibited weapons.
Hi, I'm Clara. I volunteer for Peace in Kurdistan, and I'm reading story 98. Samira Mohammed Ali. Samira was 21 years old when she was killed on the 23rd of February 2018 in the Turkish bombing of her home district in Afrin, Rojava, northern Syria. The targeting of civilians, public properties, schools, hospitals, and places of worship in the invasion of Afrin by Turkey and associated militant groups was a clear violation of international law and the first, second, and third and fourth Geneva Conventions. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lorraine Mannion, and I'm reading story 99, Amina Mohammed Mustafa. Amina was 75 years old when she was murdered on the 5th of March 2018. She and her family live in a village in Afrin, northern Syria. The Turkish aggression committed 2 massacres in one day on the 5th of March 2018. Many women and children were killed during Turkish shelling of villages in Afrin that day, including around 22 civilians, injuring around 100 more in Amina's village.
The person who was supposed to read story number 100, the last one, had to leave, unfortunately, so I will read it. Aisha Ahmed Mustafa was from a village in the Kandil Mountains in northern Iraq. She was killed on the 1st of August 2015 when Turkish fighter jets bombed the village that night. The Turkish state used warplanes and drones to target and attack civilians in their homes. The first airstrike hit Aisha's house and she died along with her husband. After the first airstrike, villagers came to help and were removing the dying from the building when Turkey launched another 2 strikes on the people and killed several other villagers.
Thank you, Dilar. That was story number 100, and that brings us to the end of the readings. It was so moving and so beautifully read. I'm sorry it was also very grueling. I know we are running late, but I messed up as a chair because members of my committee were going to introduce themselves at the beginning, and I want them to still have the opportunity to do that. So could I please ask you to introduce yourselves one by one? There'll be 5 women who will be speaking.
Thank you, Rahila. I'm Claire Baker, and I'm an international officer for Unite the Union, and I sit on the Women Defend Rojava Committee, representing the trade union movement in the UK and the UK Trade Union Freedom for Erdogan campaign. I've been extremely honoured to be here tonight with all of you and in telling the stories of all these women who have so tragically lost their lives at the hands of the Turkish state. The women's revolution in Rojava and the society built there has, of course, been an inspiration to me myself and to the trade union movement as a whole. And Rojava and the women's revolution is the direct opposite of what Erdogan's Turkey now stands for. And as he wages war on the Kurds, he also wages it against women, both within Turkey and outside its borders. And we must stand against the international silence of these killings and advocate for all women that are impacted by the anti-women policies of Erdogan's government and fight for justice for those who have been killed by his government. Thank you very much. And over to Frankie.
Hello, and thank you again to everybody for joining us. It really was an honour to have all of you speak and for us to be able to have this space with so many people. Yeah, it's just amazing. My name is Francesca Scott. I'm a member of Kurdistan Solidarity Network and a member of the autonomous women's group GIN, which is attached to the Kurdistan Solidarity Network. And I represent them as part of the Women Defend Rojava campaign. Women Defend Rojava UK committee. Apologies. I'm also a local activist in Hackney and a proud feminist. I'm sorry, one second. My notes all through. I'm honoured to share this space with you all as a survivor and as a woman who seeks. Oh, sorry, I'm really sorry. I've written the sermon badly. Apologies. I'm honoured to share the space with you all and to show respect to the women who lost their lives to the brutal patriarchal violence of the Turkish state. May we remember not only their deaths, but also the love and the joy that they brought in their lives and in their struggles. So I would just like to take a moment to think about all of the women around the world lost to patriarchal violence. As we know, in the UK and around the world, that it is a very pressing issue. Thank you.
Hi again. Hi, everyone. I'm Geeta Zainalani, an exiled refugee woman from Kurdistan, Iran. I have been quite involved with the women's movement across the Middle East, including Afghan, Iranian, Kurdish, and Arab. To be honest, whenever I think of where in history I want to take a stand, the Rojava Revolution is the first thing that comes to my mind, especially the women's struggle and movement in Rojava, which has opened a window of bright hope for ending the fundamentalism, oppression, fascism, and patriarchy that has been going on and on in the Middle East for so long. I've joined Women Defend Rojava UK to stand arm to arm with all my internationalist, feminist, and anti-capitalist sisters to be part of this organically growing revolution and feed it with our energies and solidarities. Thanks for being with us today. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Melanie Gingell, and I'm on the steering committee of Peace in Kurdistan and a member of the committee of Women Defend Rojava. My background is in law, and I'm an associate tenant at Doughty Street Chambers. I first got involved in the Kurdish question through doing trial observations in Istanbul. And the first trial was in 2013 and was a trial of 47 Turkish Kurdish lawyers. And they were all charged with disseminating terrorist propaganda. But it turned out that in fact, their real crime was being Kurdish. And also that they had each of them at some time or another represented Abdullah Öcalan, leader of the Kurdish freedom movement, either in Turkish domestic courts or at the European Court of Human Rights. I later discovered the political philosophy behind the movement, in which the liberation of women is absolutely central, and which is founded on inclusivity, ecological sustainability, and direct democracy. I'm so proud to be part of this incredibly moving memorial to these 100 women. represent just the tip of the iceberg of all of those who've lost their lives. So these women are just 100 reasons out of thousands as to why Erdogan should be prosecuted for feminicide.
Hi, my name is Vian, and I'm on the Women Defend Rojava committee in the UK and an internationalist with the Kurdistan Women's Movement. And my work with Women Defend Rojava is driven by my experience as a woman and participating in feminist struggles. And I think that we have a lot to learn from the women's movement in Kurdistan. And it's also based on a year that I spent in Rojava working with and organizing as a part of the revolutionary movement in North and East Syria, organizing for democracy and women's liberation and ecology. And yeah, my struggle here and my work with Women Defend Rojava is also driven by the fact that an old and dear friend and comrade of mine, Anna Campbell, was killed by a Turkish airstrike while defending Afrin, a region in Rojava, against invasion by the Turkish state and its jihadist mercenaries. So in her memory and in the memory of the many other women who have fought and died for freedom and for justice, we have to stand with the Kurdistan women's movement and the struggle for global gender liberation. So thank you everybody for standing with us today. It's an honor to be here with you guys.
Thank you, Vian. I'll now hand over to Dila to wrap up the evening. Thank you so much for staying so much later than the scheduled time. I'm afraid we were rather optimistic when we thought we'd get through it in 50 minutes, but there you are. Thank you everybody for coming along and giving up your time this evening. Dila, will you please wrap the meeting up? Thank you.
Thank you, Rahila. Thank you all very much for making it through such a long event that is very heavy, full of pain, full of feminicide and violence against women. It is very difficult to speak about these things. It's very hard to listen to these stories, but they are happening on a daily basis. And this is exactly the reason why we need to continue working together to put an end to this systematic murder of women that is happening without any international interference. So unfortunately, as heavy as these stories are, they also are awfully similar to many killings of women in other parts of the world, including here in the UK. We've heard stories of state violence, of police violence, of violence against women committed by their partners, and these partners are protected by the government. We heard of stories of women killed under occupation, women killed by drones, women shot by the army, and women killed by chemical weapons, and the list goes on. We didn't make it in time because these are only 100 stories read by 100 women who are also themselves, of course, on a daily basis engaging in struggles in different parts of the world. So it was very meaningful to commemorate these women in this form. But they, as others have said, they only represent so many other women that are struggling against Erdogan's patriarchal regime today. And we need to remember that still hundreds of thousands of women are living in displacement because of Erdogan, thousands of women, political prisoners, many of whom are women's rights defenders, many of whom are in prison because they have struggled against violence against women. We've seen that the state does not discriminate between from babies to elderly women. Anyone can be targeted by the violence, which is not only direct physical violence, but also systematic violence on so many different levels. We also see that there is no accountability for this. Erdogan is able to continue the systematic feminicide because Erdogan is an ally of the West, because Erdogan is a member of NATO, because Erdogan is paid by the European Union, for example, to deal
with the refugee crisis that itself it's causing. So of course, I don't want to end on a negative note. We are here because we are in struggle, because we are resisting, because we stand against patriarchal violence. And of course, these attacks wouldn't happen if there wasn't also at the same time such a strongly organized revolutionary women's movement in Kurdistan. So we need to understand it in this way. It is very easy today to celebrate womanhood, to everybody is able today to call themselves a feminist, and this is really great. It's great to see that the women's struggle is becoming mainstream. But at the same time, we need to remember it's very easy to celebrate things. It's so much harder to defend them, to defend and protect the gains of women, the achievements of women in places like Rojava, which are now under international attack. So in this sense, I think we can all take this occasion, this commemoration, as an occasion to strengthen our solidarity with each other. And as the Kurdish women's movement always says, it's no longer enough to simply stand in solidarity. We should not only write statements of condemnation whenever something bad happens. We need to build alliances, we need to join forces, and we need to make sure that we see the struggles of women in different parts of our world as our own. So in this sense, we cannot separate the violence against women in Kurdistan from violence against women here in the UK or elsewhere. Many of you have joined from different parts of the world. So the only thing that I can say after this very, very difficult event is that we have to get organized. So please do get in touch with Women Defend Rojava UK. Do get in touch with the 100 Reasons campaign, which is only now reaching its second stage. So between the 25th of November and 8th of March, more than 100,000 signatures were collected. But now in the second stage, it will be an occasion to bring more evidence and to push and pressure international organizations which are not doing their job to actually deal with this situation. But above all, this is not an attempt to simply bureaucratically prosecute Erdogan, but to really say feminicide is a global issue. It does not only affect Kurdish women, it is something that affects all of us. It is systematic, but because it is systematic, we also as women can engage in confederal women's self-organizing and build our own systems of justice, our own systems of accountability, and resist all of the systems of violence that oppress us on a daily basis. So in this sense, we all send each other and you our love and strength in these times. We, of course, in the times of the coronavirus, violence against women has increased, and we see that states are failing, governments are failing to protect women and other people who are vulnerable. So in this sense, we can say what the coronavirus has also taught us, what's also comes from the experience of Kurdish women. There is no state, no male-dominated system in the world that can give us the justice that we deserve. So in this sense, we want to take this occasion of the 100 Reasons campaign also as a form of building feminist justice transnationally and internationally. So please look after yourselves after this very heavy event. Please do get in touch. Please take strength from these women's stories and continue your own struggle, but please don't forget to unite it with the struggles of women in Kurdistan who are always inviting you to see their revolution as also your own revolution. So I think we can close here unless Rahila has any other comments to make. And of course, you can look forward to emails with information on how to get in touch.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
Satye